Assalamu alaikum. Today you're talking with Amira and Fatima, and welcome to Emotional Evolution, where we focus on our own emotional evolution because when we change, life around us changes. And today we're going to address the topic of how to deal with emotionally insensitive people. I think this is something that we all end up facing. We end up coming into some sort of contact with someone that either has done something emotionally insensitive or said something emotionally insensitive. And sometimes it's out of complete unawareness. And there are other times where there is a person who continuously says emotionally insensitive things. And I wanted to start off by addressing some of where this comes from. So, someone who is emotionally insensitive, most likely they haven't been able to exercise the muscle of emotional sensitivity. For example, let's say you have two children, and usually children are emotionally insensitive. We always hear examples of them saying, "Oh, you're like, I hate your shirt," or "Your hair looks bad," or they might say something like that. That's a childhood trait. And as parents, what our job is to do is to actually teach them the emotionally sensitive thing to say by actually getting them to be in the other person's shoes, actually saying, how do you think they felt when you said this? How do you think how do you think it would be for them knowing that, for example, they can't change their hair and this is how their hair is? And you basically exercise this muscle of emotional sensitivity or emotional intelligence. So a child can understand how their words are impacting someone else. And as we grow up as adults, where we can have a real harmony in this is knowing what's emotionally sensitive to us and what's emotionally sensitive to someone else, and just having a careful kind of flow of language. So if we know that someone feels a bit paranoid about, like, I don't know, a body part of theirs, or an accomplishment they wish they had and they don't have it. Just being mindful of our language. And that's how you basically develop the emotional sensitivity. And the second bit I want to go into is, how do you actually deal with it? Let's say someone is emotionally insensitive with you. How do you deal with it? So the first thing that I would say is, first tell them. Tell them, however, don't tell them from a criticism or a blame. I would tell them from how it made you feel, and assume that they didn't actually mean to hurt you in them saying what they said. So, for example, let's say someone said something emotionally sensitive, you would say something along the lines of, "Hey, I know you didn't mean to, I know you meant well when you said this. However, when you said it, it made me feel X, Y, and Z." So, firstly, telling them from a place of assuming that they didn't mean to hurt you, that perhaps they thought they were being lighthearted, or perhaps they had no idea of how it hurt you, and letting them know that perhaps you didn't know this, however, I ended up feeling this. Secondly, if you find that they then go and laugh at you, or that they dismiss you, or they say that they criticize you for it, like, "Oh, you're too sensitive. What's the big deal?" If they say any of those things, most likely they have a lot more emotional insensitivity within them. So the best thing to do, depending on how terrible you feel, is putting down perhaps time limits of how much time you spend, or the context in which you spend time. So perhaps they might say less emotionally insensitive things in a group, or perhaps they could even say more in a group. So you'll know what the context is, and having boundaries around the time limits you spend with them. And I'm just going to let Fatima, you talk into it too.
So, in terms of how to deal with